In this week's episode, we're going what some of you might consider pretty old school. I'm going to attempt to convince you why you should go copy first with your digital strategy. It's why we choose copy first with every digital strategy that we create, and why I believe that words work as the number one most important place to put your attention in your digital marketing strategy, even in a 2021 video-centric world. So, you want to go old school with me today? I'll see you inside the episode. So most of you all, if you have listened to me more than once or twice before, you probably know that I got my start in digital marketing as a copywriter. So I want to open this episode by saying I am clearly very biased when it comes to copy. And I want to own that I have that bias right up front, because I'm about to tell you something that is very counter to what a lot of you are used to doing and thinking about with your digital strategy. Because I know from talking to you that many of the people who listen to us, many of the people who come to us to work on their business to help them with their digital strategy are rolling really, really light in the copy. They have thought in terms of a photo and video and brand visuals first mode. Even some of them that don't have really well created, produced video have thought in terms of a video first strategy. And that's because since YouTube really took over and Facebook Live and Instagram Live and those things came to be, now LinkedIn Live and et cetera, insert platforms, live video format here, right? We think of video as the have to. Like, you can't be serious about having a digital presence. Like, you can't be serious about digital marketing without video. And I'm here to tell you that video is awesome and important, and it can definitely help with a lot of things, and it's not the most important thing. And you can totally do digital without video. What you can't do is great digital marketing without great copy. And I tell people this all the time who have invested in a beautiful website or a beautiful video, and they're wondering why this pretty, cool, visually stunning thing that they've spent thousands of dollars for, or sometimes even more than thousands of dollars, doesn't do anything. It's almost always because of copy. Because let me clue y'all in on something. Even in 2021, the internet still runs on words. And the way that most algorithms, the way that most search operates is based on words and context based on action. So we can crawl video technically, but we can't crawl video. What's being crawled in video is largely related to words. And even beyond the bots, what sells most of us is very related to words. Ugly things can sell. Ugly things sell all the time. All you have to do is look at Amazon's website to know that ugly things sell. Ugly things can make a lot of money. Bad copy creates problems that explode all over the place. And when I say bad copy can come in lots of different ways. Poor grammar, poor structure, not understanding writing for the internet, things like that. Copy is the core of a great digital strategy. Before technical things, before design, I don't want to say before user experience, but integrated with user experience as a part of how you frame that experience, copy is key. So if a digital strategy is something you want to be serious about, you must either learn yourself or hire appropriately to lead with copy. It's one of those few hard rules that I'm going to say you kind of have to do. I don't like to tell you that. I don't like to be like, oh, you have to do this, but you do have to figure out copy. Now, I want to be super clear. You do not have to become Shakespeare or even Liz Gilbert. You don't have to be a great copywriter. You don't have to be a creative writer. What you do have to do is figure out how to use words for your business in a way that works. So you can do that in one of two ways, or sometimes a combination. Most of our clients, it's a combination of these two. You can either choose a copywriter, find one or two or 70, depending the size of your business, to work with to help you craft the words. And you can learn how to write better copy yourself. Both of these paths work depending on your budget and your time. But I want to talk to you first about how to choose a great copywriter. So the first thing to know is that copywriters and creative writers are not necessarily, in fact, not usually the same thing. So often what you will see as a inexperienced in choosing someone like this business owner when you're trying to find a copywriter is credentialing like English degrees, or examples like personal blogs, or examples like, oh, I've written articles for such and such academic journal. Academics, particularly those of us who loved English lit or creative writing or things like that, often look at copywriting as a way to do what we love. And I say that in quotations for those of you listening to the podcast, and get to write for a living. But what you learn if you get to be a good copywriter is that copy is very different. That's because copy needs to be conversational, and it needs to use certain formulas in order to work. Copy isn't creative writing. So I always tell people when they're choosing a copywriter to look for evidence that that person has written copy before, not for evidence that that person has training as a writer. So if you have an English degree or a creative writing degree or have kept a personal blog for years, that does not a copywriter make. Now, it of course doesn't mean that someone who's a great writer can't learn those formulas and be a fantastic copywriter. But one of the things that I just see over and over and over is people thinking that copy is the same as creative writing, and therefore hiring someone who knows how to write stories who has no understanding of how that is different for then writing copy, and specifically writing copy for the internet. So you want to look when you're choosing a copywriter for someone who can show examples of writing copy that works for other companies. Maybe they've written Facebook ads or web pages and they've captured data on how much those convert or how well those pages perform for them. The other thing you want to look for when you're choosing a copywriter is someone whose voice matches or feels good with your own. So if you are looking for someone to write copy who writes in a very formal way, but you're a casual person, you're probably not going to be really excited about that. If you're an academic and you hire a copywriter who doesn't have the background of the academy, said again in quotations, you're probably not going to be happy with the way that person writes. So you really need to think of your copywriter as someone who is matching your business or yourself, depending on who the brand voice is, in terms of tone, personality, and writing style. Copywriters who are great are usually an investment. So super affordable copy is pretty hard to come by. Usually I want to frame it this way. Usually if copywriters feel like really cheap to you, you're going to get really cheap results, because great copy requires a lot of work, and the best copywriters charge well typically, or they quickly do, because when they start to get results, people will pay them more and they become in demand, because it's pretty rare to find a great copywriter in today's world. Unfortunately, and then I'm going to move on from choosing a copywriter. Every person who's ever wanted to be a writer is often trying to sell themselves as a copywriter online because it's a fairly easy thing to get people to pay you to do. Not to get to pay you well. Lots of copywriters are starving, unfortunately. I've been there. I feel you all. I love you, copywriters. But what you're looking for in a copywriter is someone that is an investment. In fact, if you're hiring for copywriting for your website, say a web page or a long form pillar piece like a long blog piece or something like that, you should expect to pay anywhere from several $100s to even sometimes several $1,000s for that piece of copy. That's the investment that really pays off. And unfortunately, what I see people do a lot is they invest in web designers and graphic designers and then try to get the copy cheap. When the truth is that the most important investment that most of us will make in our digital strategy is actually in our copywriter. Don't get me wrong. You know that I think that great photography and technically sound websites are really important. It's just that they're easier to come by than great copy. So if you are choosing a copywriter, you really want to look for evidence that that person has experience writing copy that either converts in terms of sales or moves someone down the page or attracts traffic from a search engine. That's what you're looking for. Now, if you're going to write the copy yourself, please do not write like you did in college or like you did in high school if you didn't go to college or you don't remember one or the other. Copywriting online is not the same as writing a research paper. It's not the same as writing an essay in school. And it's really tough when we use big, complicated language in our copy. So one of the things that we're going to offer you at the end of this episode is a copywriting checklist to use for your own website and your own emails and things like that. And one of the things that you will see in that copywriting checklist is that we have all of our copywriters write things so they pass a 5th grade reading level. So we use an app called Hemingway where they can actually put their copy in and it will show them how to simplify the language. It's totally free and totally simple, although it's frustrating sometimes. And we do that because, unfortunately, and this pains my writer-reader heart to say, but most Americans read on about a 5th grade reading level. So the average American reads on a 5th grade reading level. So if you're writing at an academic level, so college level writing, you're leaving a lot of people out, and you're likely to have big, long sentences or large words that don't really feel conducive to scroll or that people don't understand. So we really want to write in a conversational style, not like it's a college paper. We want to write the way we speak. We want to write for the internet, particularly in our copy or our blogs or our social media posts, at a simple 5th grade-ish level. Now, before you act like, oh my goodness, I can't possibly do that, and my audience is smarter than that, and you're ridiculous, and blah, 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 let me put it this way. The reason the Hemingway app is called Hemingway is because most of Ernest Hemingway's writing was written at a 5th or a 6th grade reading level. So if simple sentences written so a 5th or a 6th grader can understand them are good enough for, or were good enough for the Pulitzer Prize winning Ernest Hemingway, they're good enough for you, and they're good enough for me. Big, complicated language, when it comes to your digital strategy, only serves to alienate. Don't use it if you can avoid it. And most of us can. Unless you're marketing to doctors or scientists, you can probably avoid big, complicated, long-form sentences, big words. So try it out. Now, you don't want to write like you would write in a text message either, right? You don't want to write your copy with like abbreviated words and no punctuation and things like that. And there's a couple of reasons. First, even when we don't write well, we usually can recognize bad writing. We usually can recognize grammatical errors or spelling errors, even if we would make them ourselves in our writing. And it will make people feel like we're less credible. And because of that, Google has added into the algorithm now several years ago. It's been like 6-ish, 7-ish years. It's been a while, but people still don't realize it. Indicators about grammar and usage style that make a website show up less in a search if it is grammatically incorrect. So if there are egregious spelling errors or grammar errors, you're not going to show up because your site is going to be considered less credible because people don't want to see that. So we can't write like we would in a text, but we don't want to write like a college paper either. The nice middle ground is to write our copy as if we were having a conversation with one of our personas, one of our clients. It's easy to do if we think of empathy and if we think in terms of conversation. It's simple to do if we aren't trying to impress, but instead are trying to help people make the decisions they need to make in order to do the thing we are asking them to do. And that's what great copy does. It moves people from where they are now to where they want to be. Now, I told you that we were going to talk about a copy-first strategy in a video-centric world, and I want to talk specifically about why that is and like how copy relates to videos themselves next. So there are 3 things that if you are doing a lot of video marketing, copy really relates to your video marketing and really can bump up that video. Nothing hurts my digital marketer soul more than when I see someone investing really heavily in video, maybe a lot of equipment or a lot of editing or storylines or production value, and haven't invested anything in the words around their videos that make those perform better. So there's 3 main pieces that I want you to think about when you're thinking about words in a video world. One is SRT files. So these are your custom captions that are used for hearing impaired folks or even people who just don't want the sound on for whatever reason to consume your video. These can be created with services like Rev, and they are different from the auto craptions, as my friend Jennifer likes to call them, that YouTube or Facebook or platforms like that will add for you automatically. They're custom in that the language is correct, the spelling is correct, the grammar is correct, and they do cost a little bit of money, but not a lot of money, not so much that it's prohibitive for most video. So for example, you might be consuming this podcast right now in a podcast feed, but you also might be watching it on YouTube and reading the captioning. Maybe because you don't hear so well, or you just like to consume content that way. Or you came across the video on YouTube and your baby was sleeping in your lap and you didn't want to press play and wake the baby up. There's all kinds of reasons why people watch captioned videos. Those SRT files, those custom captions, also help the algorithms to understand what your video is about. So for example, in a 2021 world, if you upload a custom SRT file to your YouTube video, YouTube will crawl the words in that file to help determine where your video should show up in a search. This does not happen when you use auto captioning. So it's an advantage with search engines as well. The other places where you use words, both on YouTube and on your website, are with video tags and video sitemaps. So video tags and sitemaps are not consumed the way copy is, but they are words that are used to help the algorithms understand what searches your video should come up with and what your video is about. So video sitemaps are very important for your website and help your website to understand how videos are correlated with your other content and where they should be put in a search engine. And video tags, which you may be used to seeing if you've uploaded anything to YouTube, are short phrases, sometimes 1 or 2 words, more often 3 to 5 words, that are things that you would like to show up for in a topic search on YouTube. All of these come together with your video title and description, those are copy, to help the algorithms understand what your video content is. And your video content title and description also help consumers of your video a lot to understand if that video is for them. So, for example, on our podcasts, our show notes writer, this is copy, right, writes a version of the show notes for Apple Podcasts, a version of the show notes for Spotify, and a version of the show notes for YouTube. Now, they're all basically the same show notes that are slightly modified for the platform, for that particular platform. This is important because every platform handles things a little bit differently. So just like we talked about last week when we were talking about the Trinity principle, if you are putting your show notes directly from Apple Podcasts into YouTube, it's probably not going to go so well for you. 3 to 5 minutes of editing them so that the formatting matches pretty well is all you need to make sure that you're using words appropriately for that platform. Okay, so once you get through the video, I know what the next thing is because this is the next thing that gets said to me all the time. Okay, Rena, you've convinced me that words are important, that a copy-first strategy is important when it comes to videos. But what about voice search? Isn't voice search taking over? Why, yes, it is. Voice search is about 50% as of, it's April 2021. It's about 50% of search on mobile devices. So yes, it's taking over. But voice search is still based on words. Google isn't like picking up your voice. It's picking up your voice and converting it into a way that it can be processed. So think about voice search in terms of how you write your copy this way. You want to focus on conversational keywords. Again, this is why academic style writing doesn't work for the internet. You need to use words that people would actually say out loud in a conversational way. Here's a great example of this. So you might write a big long sentence about how to hire a business coach for da-da-da-da, cash flow, whatever. But what someone's going to voice search is probably, how do I hire a business coach to help me increase my cash flow? You want to think about how would someone ask the question to a friend and use keywords appropriately that way. Now, this is very persona driven. This is why personas are the first step in any digital strategy. Well, one of the many reasons why personas are the first step in any digital strategy, right? Is because the conversational keywords that you're going to use are going to be different based on your persona. So if my persona is a 65-year-old man in Tallahassee, Florida, he's going to talk very different than a 31-year-old woman of color in Baltimore. I don't know. They're going to have very different language patterns, very different ways of asking the same questions. And you need to know what those conversational keywords are going to be like for your persona. So that's why when we are doing a digital strategy, keywords always come after personas so that we can use the right words and phrases. Now, don't get me wrong. Google can make translations between different types of words and phrases that mean the same thing. But because so much of search is wrapped in context in a 2021 world, a website that is using the languaging of that person is much more likely to come up in search. So using our example, the extension office for the state of, let's say for The extension office for FSU is much more likely to come up in a search by a man in Tallahassee than a woman in Baltimore. So in Baltimore, you're more likely to get something centric to that city, right? And some of that is based on location, but sometimes it's also based, we just used a really on-the-nose example, it's also based on languaging. This is also incidentally why different types of coaches or authors will show up for different types of people, because the languaging better matches the patterns of their search. So when you're thinking about voice search, I want you to think about conversational keywords based on your personas. Then I next want you to think in your copy about considering questions-based headlines, headers, etc. So asking a question is often the way that we frame a voice search. Hey Google, how do I? Hey Google, what is this? Hey Google, where is this? Hey Google, what is this? Hey Google, how do I do this? So if you frame your headlines and your headers in terms of conversational questions, you're often more likely to win than if you're trying to create something cute and creative. Incidentally, this is why FAQ pages, that's frequently asked questions, and or FAQs on long-form sales pages, win all the time in search. They win with users because they help users quickly find their answer. And what is Google trying to do? Make a better user experience. Therefore, they are going to win in search. And when you frame something as an FAQ, as a question, when someone voice searches that question, you are much more likely to come up. So I implore you, if you're trying to rank a long-form sales page, or if you're trying to rank for your product or service, and you don't have either standalone FAQ pages or FAQs on your long-form content pages, you do that as a first step. Like, put it on your list right now, because FAQ pages win over and over and over again over years. They're one of the first things that I do for almost every website that I work on, is add more FAQs, both to long-form pages and as standalone pages, depending on the site. So if you don't have them, please get them on your site. Now, this next piece that's correlated with your FAQs isn't really copy, but sort of. And you need to get comfortable with it in order to be successful in search in a 2021 world. I feel like I've said in a 2021 world a lot today. So that is schema markup on your content. So schema markup is a type of data that we use to frame content on a web page, or I should say Google uses, to frame what content is on a website. It's little pieces of essentially code that, or not essentially, it is little pieces of code that tell a search engine what your content is. The most famous way that this is used, and the primary way that it was originally used, was for things like news articles and recipes. But in today's world, there are probably 40 to 60 regularly used different types of schema. And using them is primarily how you come up in a rich snippet. A rich snippet is those Google searches where a question is answered directly in a search, or the definition of something is given directly in a search, where Google has grabbed that information that you need and put it directly in the search, so you never have to leave the search engine. That primarily comes from schema, and if you're not using it on your site, and P.S., most of you probably are not, it's one of the most important technical things you can do to make your copy perform better. So this is a place where you can probably ask a web developer or someone on your web team for help with this. Now, if you're a WordPress user, there are lots of plugins where you can do this through pretty simply, but there's a level of hazard with schema that I don't recommend the not so digitally savvy. Do this part yourself. Ask your web team for help, or you can shoot us a message and we can point you in the right direction. It's not super complex, but the difficulty level is enough that I'd rather you probably not do that part on your own. You can break some other stuff. But one of the common things we see with websites or digital content that have the copy wrap, so they've invested in good copy, or the owner or the primary salesperson is a good copywriter, so they have great words, but they're not performing well in search, is because of these two things: this lack of conversational language and or the lack of schema. The next thing that you want to think about with your copy is mobile first, local centric formatting. So most people are searching on a mobile device at this point, and Google is ranking you on a mobile first experience. So you need to consider how your copy is consumed on a mobile device. That means instead of big long sentences and big long paragraphs, we break our text up, sometimes artificially, because a very dense 7 to 8 line paragraph is difficult to read on a phone. It means that we consider the size font that we use so that that font is easy to read on a phone. And it means that we understand that anytime someone is searching on a mobile device, their search is wrapped in a local context that makes it really important that we consider local cues in our own content. So even if you are marketing nationally, it can make sense to use local cues for the places that are biggest for your personas. Think of it like dropping a pebble into the water so that it can ripple out across the whole pond. Now, a word on formatting when we think about this. It's really critical that we use formatting of our text appropriately, not for styling. So most of us, and I see this constantly, even with digital marketers where I feel like they ought to know better, we use those things in our editor that have the H1 or the H2 or the italics on them as ways to format our page visually. So we use them to make fonts bigger or change the colors or things like that because we've learned that that's what they do, right? But what we don't realize if we haven't learned a little bit about search is that those things, that H1, that H2, that italics, that quote, those are actually specific cues to a search engine about what the thing is. So an H1 or an H2 or an H5, although we don't get that deep very often, those are header tags. And they organize your written content like organizing an outline. This is where your college research papers can benefit you. You remember when you had to write outlines for your college research papers, right? So you only get to have one header. Just like that on your web page, you only get to have one H1. If you have more than one, you're going to get a ding on your grade. You'll lose points. Same thing with a Google search. If you have more than one H1, it confuses the internet about what your thing is, and you're going to lose points. You're not going to rank as well. H2s, you might have a few more of those, right? You might have 5 or 6 sections in your paper. So you get like 5 or 6 header 2s. And then underneath those headers, you have subtopics. Those are header 3s or header 4s or header 5s. So think about organizing your written content on your page hierarchically. First thought, second thought, third thought underneath the second thought, right? That helps the search engine understand what is in your content and what is the most important versus less important. So if you're using those headers or quote tags or things like that just for styling, you're likely to confuse a search engine and or literally break what those things are for, and it will cause you problems. Instead, what you want to use to customize your formatting is either you can frame it in CSS or you can use a builder tool like Elementor for WordPress or Divi, or most drag and drop tools have ways that you can change the color, change the size, of a word or two without making it a header or a quote, because those are specific things in your copy that indicate to a search engine what the thing is. It's really important that we don't use those tools just for formatting, that we think about how they frame the story put across in our words. Now, if you want to see how this is done really masterfully, you can go analog and open up a well-formatted book. We do this, we see this in a book all the time. We use these varying formatting tools to frame the copy, to frame the writing in a way that is understandable and easier to consume. It's called typesetting. That's essentially what you're doing on a page, and it's just as much a part of your story as the words themselves. This is a place where a great designer can really help a copywriter. A great designer can lay out a page in a way that makes the copy or the story easier to consume, more engaging to consume. So in a copy-first digital strategy, we think of design as the thing that helps to tell the story we are telling with our words, instead of in a design-first strategy where we think of our story or our words as supporting the visual. I don't want to say that it's wrong to do it the design-first way, but I do kind of want to say that it's going to put you in a more difficult position as a small company, because it's much more expensive and labor intensive to do really great design than it is to do really great copy. So, want to end this episode because I feel like it's really dense and there's a lot of stuff here. You may need to listen to this a few times with something I say to my team and my clients all the time, which is this idea that poor execution is a compounding problem. Meaning if you build one page where it's like missing the right formatting or the words are a little too complex or something like that, it's probably fine, right? But if you one time over here use two H1s, two header tags ones, and then over here you leave out the metadata, and then over there you're writing at a 12th grade level instead of a 5th grade level. Over time, all those errors, they compound to make it really hard for a search engine or a user, right, to understand and consume your content. So with that in mind, I want to offer you something to help you. If you go to realignyourstrategy.com, we have for you a checklist, and in the show notes you can link directly to the checklist that we use with every one of our clients every time. It's our copy and formatting checklist, and it will walk you through how to format a blog, an email, a landing page properly, how to write the copy properly, so that when it's consumed, it has the best possible chance of success. I'm going to tell you, this checklist is dense. There's a lot there. And every time we introduce it to a new copywriter or a new formatter, it's a little overwhelming to start with. But over the course of a couple of months, they get it down packed and it moves really quickly. And then every piece of content that they produce, either as the writer or the formatter or as both, every piece of content they produce has the best chance at success possible. Every piece of content they produce is clean and lifts up the whole site. It's so powerful. I think of it as our copy pilot's checklist. So no plane ever takes off anymore without the pilot going through a checklist, whether that pilot has flown for 3 days or 30 years. That's because we know that it makes a flight safer, because people forget things, we miss things, we need cueing. Using this copy and formatting checklist will ensure that you don't miss anything, that you don't forget anything, so your content can soar instead of crash. I hope that this episode was useful to you. I know that it is really dense. So I'd love to know what your most important thing that you learned that you didn't know or surprised you about copy was today. You can come over and let me know at realignyourstrategy.com. See y'all next week.